Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Lee Schwartz, and I'm the Director of Business Development for SVA Certified Public Accountants. I'd like to welcome you to the second webinar in our vet series titled Veterinary Staffing Stats, Trends, and Tips. Yes, the all-important survey results you've been waiting for. Now, before we get started, I just want to take a sec and say a few words about SVA and our history working with veterinarians. Like many of you, we got to where we are by being independent. And our vision moving forward is to remain that way and continue serving the same clients we have since 1974. And a huge part of that client base over these last now 50 years has been within our healthcare practice, which includes medical, dental, and of course, vet practices. Our mindset is that when you're a practice owner or shareholder, you have to work with someone who's more than just an accountant or tax preparer. You really need someone who's a true advisor working collaboratively with you. And this webinar, the survey data, these are all ways in which we can do that. Now, just a quick note about the data we're about to share. The more practices that participate, the better the survey data. So only those practices are going to receive the full results. If you didn't participate, well, number one, next year, please participate. But you can still go to our website and download the executive summary, which has more limited data. And that'll be available next week. Also, if you have any suggestions or any data that we didn't ask for that you think would be useful in future years, please chat that in or reach out to us separately. We really want this information to be as valuable to you as possible. So send in questions as we go, but we're probably going to wait till the end to answer them. And let me just say up front, we won't provide any information that would allow you to identify any individual practice or small subset of information. Obviously, confidentiality is very, very important in this process. We want to make sure that everybody who participates feels comfortable doing so. So let me briefly introduce our speakers. If you've attended our past vet webinars, you already know these guys. But again, we have two of our most experienced people in our healthcare and veterinary practice to walk you through everything today. We have Andy Slinger, who's a principal, and Nate Drykosen, who's a manager. Both of these gentlemen are CPAs, and they work with practice owners and practice managers on efficiency, tax strategy, and profitability strategies. Okay, sorry about all the talking from me. Andy, I'm going to let you take it from here and start unveiling the data that everyone's waiting for.
Thanks, Lee, and thank you again, everybody, for taking the time out of your day to join us. As he said, this is the second part of our vet series this fall, winter. And we're taking a break from the buy-sell arena and really focusing on this survey data, which is highly anticipated by you and your peers. And as Lee said, we can't stress it enough. We need your feedback because this is the first year we've done it. So in addition to everything we've tried to provide here, we would love to know what will make this survey even better next year and just make the ability to know what's going on in the industry and to put your practice in the best position possible. So what can we add next year? The other thing we're looking to do is double our participation. So we really encourage you, if you didn't participate, to participate and get everybody in your network to do the same. So to set the lay of the land, the plan for today is I'm going to start with some high-level general trends, because as much as you love the data, you also love to know what's going on. And Nate and I are in these meetings with all of you on a weekly basis, and we have a really good pulse on what's going on in the veterinary marketplace, and so we want to give you that high level. I'll turn it over to Nate, and he'll get into the details of the data. And then at the end, it'll be like, okay, now what? Where do we go from here? How do we best improve our stance in the marketplace? And that'll be where we wrap it up. So to start, here's some trends. And I don't think any of these are going to necessarily be a surprise. We could spend the whole time on even more trends, but looking at it, no surprise, like everybody else, it's a struggle for talent. And while I hate to make generalizations, what we see is, the more remote and rural you are, it's even more of a struggle right now. Okay, depending on what kind of pipeline you have and what's around you. And it's, it can be all positions, but, techs and assistants, hard to find, especially certified techs. And so you're being creative. on, shifting your talent around, seeing who can do what in your practice. Bookkeepers, we have a lot of you that are, solo practitioners that are maybe still doing your own book work on weekends or, on a business day. And that right now you have as many patients as you've ever had. You can get more patients every day. So if you could shift the book work to someone else, that would mean more revenue, but that's hard because right now bookkeepers are very hard to find, especially good quality bookkeepers. And probably the number one struggle right now is with associates. And again, I have to favor the more rural areas. And that's having tremendous effects of all different kinds. Some of you, it's hindering your growth. You right now, you could be going if you had an associate or two, and you just don't. So you're having to cap your day and the number of patients you see. It's hindering transitions, mentoring, future transition of practices where, it's getting in that 3 to 5 or less year window to transition that practice, but you have no one, ready to buy it, nobody to grow into the ownership role. And quite frankly, it's leading to more and more corporate deals that are happening right now in the marketplace. So that's really the top 3 areas. You're having to get creative in what you do to attract and retain that talent. The next thing that we're seeing, although the survey data says that, some of you are still on the leading edge of this, retention bonuses. Historically, many of you simply would do a year-end type bonus, maybe around Christmas, and then maybe an annual salary or wage increase. Okay. Again, to be competitive, the concept of a retention bonus is, you announce to your staff, hey, for all the hard work, because we've had, record years here, we're going to go ahead and announce a bonus to you, and you pay it out. And then you always have the next one announced as just a little way to kind of have that carrot in front of your staff to say, hey, if you stick around a little longer, you're going to get another bonus. And you always have those layered, one after the other. They got to be meaningful. But again, it's just one tool in your arsenal. The other nice thing about a bonus is you don't have to do them forever. When this thing turns, if it turns, you can turn them off. The problem with raises, significant raises compound on each other each year, right? And obviously, once you give compensation, to reduce somebody's salary or wages is never going to be something positive to you or your practice. A lot of you for many years had a benefits package and it worked, and you really didn't have to tweak anything. And again, now, because you have to consider everything, you're like, well, let's take a look at it. Retirement plan, one of our biggest things, over the last 18 months is, and been encouraging you to look at your retirement plan and say, okay, we've had a simple for 10 years, time to go to a more robust 401k profit sharing type plan. Many of you have, as the data will show. That again accomplishes, a tax savings. It makes hopefully your benefit package and your employees a little stickier, and it also gets you one step closer to retirement every year by putting more money away. Health insurance costs, they continue to go up and up. So you're having to get creative there. A lot of you are looking potentially at, okay, can I go to an HSA plan? Does that work with my staff? Does that lower the premium? Maybe I can give them a little bit of money, to fund their HSA, and everybody is happier based on the mix. So again, looking at that, trying to be competitive and creative in how to control that cost. The next one, not a surprise to anybody, but your costs of everything, staff, supplies, lab. The question then is, are you raising your fees in tandem? Because obviously if you add those up, many of you for the first time increase fees twice. You've never done that before. So that's a big trend. And then really the last one is retaining clients and clients being mobile. You might say, why is that? Well, again, you are so booked, and clients these days, they want to get in and they want to get in soon. And if they can't get in to see you, then guess what? They're looking. And so it's a challenge. And so one thing I ask you is that most of you track your new clients on a monthly basis. Might be an idea to be really tracking your retention, and where are clients going when they call and say, hey, I need my records and I'm going somewhere else. All right. With that, let's get into the data. And first, I just want to give you a really high-level overview before I give it to Nate for the details. So as you're going to see in a minute, the survey really covers all areas of the state of Wisconsin, which we were really pleased by. Wage increases, you'll see 4 to 8%, again, higher than you've probably ever seen. And so I ask you, with having increased wages by that, with the supply and lab costs, again, is your fee increase enough at this point? On that note, almost half of you that participated increased fees 2 times last year. 17% of you all of a sudden now are having to do sign-on bonuses for certain levels of staff. Only 11 of you are doing retention bonuses. So again, that might be an opportunity for you as you listen to the data. A very interesting thing that came out of this survey data. You're going to notice that in some positions, the 0 to 3 years of experience actually make more than those at 4 years or more. So you're having to do whatever you can do to get people in. Now you might have to go back and say, uh-oh, before I have a problem now with my more seasoned people realizing that they're making less than the new people we just hired, you're going to might have to adjust their compensation across the board. And then, the last thing is pre-COVID, loyalty programs kind of started to get a hold. And I guess what we've noticed through this poll is that, loyalty programs really aren't necessary right now. Okay, let's start with a quick poll just to get a sense of our live audience. Very simply, did you participate in the survey? And the results. Okay. So 1/3 of you did, 2/3 of you did not. So again, I know Lee will mention it again at the end, but please, we encourage you next year, please participate and please encourage others to do so that we can continue to build on this year over year. Okay, so who participated? 53 practices participated, as I mentioned, all across the state of Wisconsin. Those of you that get the specific data, South Central is really going to be the Dane County area. Southeast is going to be Greater Milwaukee. Northeast is going to be Green Bay, Fox Valley, and Sheboygan. And then other is going to be the rest of the state. As far as practice size, it's really nice to see we're really across the board. We have our solo practitioners and up from there. So we have a nice mix of participants to really give you a holistic sense of based on size. Same thing with revenue. You can see 92% of you are at 3 million or less. Okay, and it's almost not quite third, but again, very nice wider range of participation. The reason we ask about clinic type, historically, brick and mortar is still 75%. More and more though, we meet people and talk to people that are either introducing a fully mobile clinic or those of you with brick and mortar delving into more of a hybrid method and offering some portion of your practice in the mobile arena. And then as far as specialty, not a surprise to us because a lot of the clients that we work with are small animal or mixed. And again, 89% of you are in that arena. And we do have, more and more equine practices that we're starting to work with as well. And so really that gives you a high level lay of the land of the vet industry. And it really gives you a background of, the survey, who participated and where the responses come from. So now what you've all been waiting for, I'll turn it over to Nate and he'll get into the details.
Thanks, Andy. Before we really get into the position specific aspects of the results, thought I'd take a minute and kind of recap how some of this was structured. So this format is going to look familiar to those of you who did actually take the survey. And really what we were trying to capture is where the differences lie between new hires versus medium tenure versus longtime employees. And we'll try and give a good high level overview of the data as a whole. But as we digested the data, we did also consider geographic regions, as Andy mentioned, and then also took a look at urban areas versus less populated areas as well. So the first position we can touch on is the receptionist / client service role. And what we're seeing is an overall linear trend based on experience, which will probably not surprise many. And, we did realize as we were going through this, based on the comments we received, that some of these positions do overlap depending on roles within a clinic. So we do have to take into account some variability there based on roles and responsibilities. Next position we were curious about was bookkeepers. And as a subset of the population that responded, having a dedicated bookkeeper position was actually relatively rare. And that kind of explained maybe the little bit of a dip in a linear trend here between the 0 to 3 years onto the 4 to 9 years, and then the 10 or more years. Oftentimes this type of role is combined with an office manager role or even performed by an owner DVM in their free time. But really, bookkeepers tend to be pretty hard to find in today's market, especially good ones. But they can be really beneficial in freeing up your producing staff. They are not cheap, as the office hourly pay rates are. They tend to be one of the more compensated positions in the office, but a good one can really be worth the investment to be able to free up the producing staff to continue to produce at their potential. If you're an owner doing this role currently and not having a bookkeeper on staff, you might want to consider who on your team might be good to develop into absorbing some of those duties, so that either you can shed some of that admin time and focus on clinical producing time if you'd like, or hopefully regain some of your own personal time as well. It's a great investment to help improve the overall reliability of the data you're receiving. And a somewhat related role, we have the manager/other administrative role as well. And as I mentioned, sometimes that is combined with the bookkeeping role in some clinics, depending on size. But this type of person, we saw all sorts of variability across the board. And really, I think it can be traced to the various duties that might be encompassed within this position. Depending on size, you might have human resources roles, bookkeeping, billing. They might have some client service in terms of actual facing clients and taking shifts at reception. It does create a lot of variability, but overall, a trend going upwards with experience as well. Kennel assistance is one that we added this year, as it's becoming more and more considered as a separate defined role within clinics when we're seeing different payroll ledgers as we're meeting with prospects and meeting with their clients. This role tends to skew a little bit younger and be newer employees, and maybe especially very part-time employees. So we're not seeing really any responses for kennel assistants beyond 10 years. And most of these folks tend to skew lower in the experienced years. On to vet techs, which is an extremely relevant topic. I'm sure it surprises exactly no one in attendance that having rockstar techs really contribute to the success of your practice. And it is also Tech Week. So if you have not, please make sure you take a few moments and appreciate your techs that you have in your clinic. They can really contribute and help share the workload across everyone and help things run smoothly. One of the things we realized after the survey this year, and we did get some feedback on this, is next year we will definitely distinguish between credentialed technicians and uncredentialed positions, which might account for some of the variability in wages we're seeing here. This is one of the hardest positions to attract and retain right now, and really has been for a few years. But we did surprisingly have quite a few respondees that had long tenured techs over 10 years. So props to any clinic that's able to do that, and hopefully that continues into the future. Veterinary assistants are a position that, again, linearly upwards, but we've been seeing more and more clinics assign assistants greater or expanding roles. So I think part of that has led to a wage increase over the last few years, on top of what the market has done as well. And before we move on to the DVMs, as I mentioned, we did take a look specifically at urban and rural areas with our respondees. We ended up considering within, the trends in those two types of markets, we ended up throwing out the non-DVM veterinary responses because we were seeing a lot of variability there. And we were able to attribute that to negotiating during the contract process and just overall circumstances of hire and workloads and client mix and all sorts of variables. So there's really too much to account for there. But taking out the non-owner DVM positions, we found in general, urban areas tended to skew about 4.8% higher in overall average wages. And more rural areas tend to skew about 3% lower than the overall wage average for veterinary clinics that responded. So really looking at a spread of about 7%. And that's very, very generally, which was definitely an interesting find. Maybe the most common questions we get are around the non-owner DVM position. We saw a huge amount of variability in responses and certainly a few outliers here, as you'll see with some of the maximum data points. But overall, it did seem to capture the trend. We saw increasing wages based on experience, which certainly makes sense. As those folks come on board, they become more efficient, more confident in their abilities. They're going to start to produce more for those that are tied to some sort of pro-sale arrangement or production only arrangement. And then also, as they tend to produce more, they're more than likely going to be receiving bonuses as part of that and continuing to work with the clinic. So we certainly expect that there are going to be bonuses included with and factored into these hourly wage calculations that were provided by respondents. And one comment in general on pro-sale arrangements and production arrangements that we've been seeing. It wasn't that long ago, 20% was kind of the norm that we were seeing in the marketplace. And we've seen a number of contracts now really in the last year to 2 years that are trending up from that. And many times we're seeing in the 21 to 22% range as kind of the true up for production is the norm with most contracts, which is certainly an increase from just a couple of years ago. And that trend has probably started really gaining momentum in the last 3 to 4 years, I would say. All right, on to a quick poll question. Just trying to gauge your reaction to what we've covered so far. Where do you think your wages and salaries compare with the market? Lower? Think they're pretty aligned with the market, or you think they're higher with the market? All right, so it looks like a good mix here. About a third lower than the market, about a quarter higher than the market, and then about half really feel like they're aligned with the market. So kind of a good mix there. All right, let's move out of salaries and onto kind of the less tangible aspect of a compensation package with benefit plans. We were able to compile a good amount of data on a number of different type of benefits. And really, I think the big takeaway from this survey is that benefit offerings have really expanded over the last several years. And this was true across geography and practice size. The most offered benefits are health insurance, dental insurance, staff discounts for their personal pets, and educational assistance programs, which really educational assistance programs seem to have been an area that the veterinary industry has traditionally been strong with, encouraging techs for further education and other positions to get the credentials they seek. But even more in the last couple of years, there has been more growth in that sector as well. And I'm guessing that's probably due to some of the favorable tax benefits that have come to light with more recently passed tax laws in that arena. So employees really seem to find them valuable, and it seems to help retain staff. So another component beyond some of the insurances and educational benefits, certainly important to many employees are retirement and profit sharing plans. So historically, far and away, simple IRAs have been the tool of choice historically for veterinary practices, but what we're finding is the 401k is really catching up, which is exciting to see. It's allowing folks to put away more toward retirement, especially owners and higher earning DVMs. And we are starting to see more add-ons to the 401k plan with profit sharing and cash balance plans as well. And one thing, if you're quickly counting the percentages there, you'll see that they don't add to 100%. And the reason for that is both the 401k percentage includes also basic 401k, the profit sharing and cash balance plan attributes, because profit sharing and cash balance plan are add-ons to basic 401k plans. Another item we were curious about was whether clinics were starting to offer sign-on bonuses as a way to attract talent in the more competitive market we see today. So commonly we saw, in terms of position, techs around $1,000, assistants around $500, and non-owner DVMs, again, a ton of variability based on circumstance and location. And also not super popular yet, but maybe growing in popularity. Certainly something that you could consider moving forward as you look to pull in staff to help meet your production needs, especially a great tool for attracting experienced staff as well. In terms of wage increases, we wanted to gauge really what folks were thinking in terms of what they plan to do for increases across the board for their staff, not necessarily position specific. And unsurprisingly, we saw a lot of variability in the data, but this result is one that we expected. Right around 4 to 8% increases this year, and that is in contrast to really the last couple years, or maybe on a longer horizon, maybe the last 4 to 7 years, where overall wage increases and wage growth and consumer price index were pretty flat. So kind of a really big change in the marketplace, kind of catching up a little bit for some down years. One of the items that Andy mentioned earlier was a retention bonus as a really powerful tool to help compensate your staff without the cumulative effect of hourly wages. So this is a great way to reward your employees that are longer tenured and for continuing their tenure without increasing their hourly wage. It's something that we've been certainly advocating for with many of our clients to avoid that kind of compounding effect with wages. And bonus can be a one-time type thing. It can also be tailored by position. It could also be tailored by the individual. Say you have a tech that you feel is ultra performing, you could certainly find ways to justify a little bit higher bonus for that extremely valuable person than you would for maybe a more average tech in your clinic. So there's certain ways you could structure this to give yourself some more flexibility. Next, we have the loyalty program. Was something we've been hearing more and more about, and we found it's not really common in the population yet, but it can be a really great tool to help continue your clients' loyalty and prevent that mobility we've started to see and started to hear about in the marketplace. It also tends to really resonate well with the younger pet owners you're seeing. We're also curious on fee increases. Our options were 1 or 2 increases this year, but really we did see some clinics that had more than that. And it's great to see that veterinarians are starting to recognize to pass costs along and really capture the value that they're providing. So some tips and next steps to kind of recap everything we've covered so far. Culture really matters. Throwing money at staff is at best been proven to be a short-term solution. What really fosters your tenure is everything else that's included, be that the environment, the type of work, balancing work demands with personal demands. All those things weigh on staff's mind. Revisit your benefits offerings. What is really important to your staff? What can you offer that you're currently not offering that might help with that? As your new staff come on board, make sure you revisit the market rates of your more tenured staff. Obviously, that fosters just goodwill and overall equity across the clinic. When you're presenting compensation to staff, make sure you present the whole compensation package, including insurances, including flexibility, including anything else that you feel they find value in. It's really surprising to see staff have a hard time seeing beyond just the dollar figure they see per hour but they don't necessarily see the total investment that you have in them. Consider increasing your fees again if you haven't already for 2022 and into 2023. You might also want to consider a bonus program, either retention or signing bonus if you haven't already. And don't be afraid in the challenging market we're in to get creative and expand beyond traditional recruiting tactics. Get your staff involved, do some fun social media things or media postings as well. Those seem to really resonate well. Andy, anything else I missed or that you'd like to add?
No, I think you did a fantastic job covering that, Nate. I want to encourage you all, if you have questions, please chat those in. We may get to a couple live, otherwise we'll be sure to get back to you privately. Before we move on, we want one final poll question that I'm very interested in. So after all the information we've presented, what are you going to focus on most? Fee increases, wages and salaries, bonus programs, your benefits package, or quite frankly, all the above? All right, and the results, wow, look at that, overwhelmingly. There's just the realization that there's a lot to focus on. So again, thank you so much for your participation, and Lee, I will hand it off to you.
Thank you, Andy and Nate. Holy smokes, a lot of information, a lot to go through. So let's wrap it up. We're already a couple minutes over. We did have a couple questions come in, but they were very specific. We can get those answered, but it's going to take a little bit of digging. So just we can reach out to you directly. I just want to mention again that if you shared your practice data, you will receive the full results via email I think by early next week. Now, those full results will include some region-specific wage data as well. There was just only so much information we could go through in a short half hour today. But now, if you didn't share that data, you'll be able to download that executive summary sometime next week. Or alternatively, we'll share it with you if you're open to a meeting. We'd like to introduce ourselves, learn a little bit about your practice, and I mean, it'd be a great opportunity to get to know Nate and Andy a little bit more, right? So you got that going for you too. But you can go to sva.com/vet series to sign up for the other webinars in the series. Our next one is November 17th, and it's the second part of our buy sell series. This one will focus on how to place a value on your practice. And lastly, I just want to remind everyone that the SVA team is only a phone call or an email away. So if you're a client, please reach out to your SVA professional as questions arise. And if you're not an SVA client, you can contact me, Lee Schwartz, or anyone on our sales team to get you the help or the answers that you need. Thanks for joining us. Hope you enjoyed our first veterinary survey, and hope you enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Bye-bye.